My descent into the darker corners of the internet started the way most questionable decisions do. Out of boredom. It was a slow Thursday night, and I was sitting in my tiny apartment just off Green Street, surrounded by textbooks I wasn't reading and a to-do list I wasn't tackling. A group chat notification blinked on my phone. A few friends sharing memes and joking about Darknet horror stories. "Have you ever actually looked at that stuff?" someone had asked. "LOL, no thanks, I like my soul," came the reply. But the idea stuck. I wasn't doing anything productive anyway, and curiosity was gnawing at me. So, I opened my laptop, dimmed the lights for no particular reason, and typed how to access the Darknet into Google. It wasn't as difficult as I'd expected. Download this, configure that. Within half an hour, I was staring at the interface of a browser that promised access to a world most people wouldn't dare to explore. It felt like opening Pandora's box. At first, it was exactly what I'd imagined. Sketchy marketplaces offering fake passports and credit card details, forums with conspiracy theories that made QAnon look tame, and chat rooms full of cryptic usernames exchanging coded messages. It was unnerving, but in a distant, almost unreal way, like walking through a bad neighborhood in a foreign city. Then I saw it. A small, innocuous link tucked in the corner of a minimalist page, surrounded by grainy black and white images of locked doors. The Velvet Room. Experience the unimaginable. One click away from a journey like no other. It was vague, almost laughably so, but there was something about it that piqued my interest. The simplicity felt deliberate, as though the page didn't need to try hard to draw people in. Against my better judgment, I clicked. The screen went black for a moment before text faded in, white against the dark. "Welcome to the Velvet Room. Are you ready to begin?" Two options appear below. Yes and no, I hesitated. Everything about this screamed scam or virus, but my curiosity outweighed my caution. Besides, I'd already taken steps to protect myself. A VPN, a burner email, a laptop with no personal data. I clicked yes. The screen shifted to what looked like an old chat interface. The header read, "Name your desire. The room listens." A text box blinked, waiting for me to type something. I almost laughed at the absurdity. What did they expect people to say? World peace? Infinite money? Out of sheer amusement, I typed, "I want to know something no one else knows." A response appeared instantly. "You already know more than you should. Let's see how deep your curiosity goes." I frowned, leaning closer to the screen. It was clever, but nothing extraordinary. Probably an automated script program to spit out cryptic responses. Still, I felt a strange thrill. What do I know? I typed. There was a pause, then everything. "Shall we play a game?" Another set of options appeared. Yes and no against every instinct screaming at me to close the browser. I clicked yes. The game began simply. A series of puzzles flashed on the screen, ranging from riddles to logic problems. I solved them all with relative ease, each correct answer unlocking the next level. The room responded with vague congratulations. Good. Clever. Very promising. Then the questions became oddly specific. "What's the color of the door across from your apartment?" I froze. My first thought was that it was a lucky guess. Most doors in my building were red. But the game wasn't finished. "How many steps from your kitchen to your bathroom?" I swallowed hard. That was no coincidence. "What is this?" I typed, my fingers trembling. The response was instant. A mirror. "Do you like what you see?" A chill ran down my spine. It wasn't funny anymore. I reached for the laptop's power button, but before I could press it, another message appeared. "We see you. Nice apartment on Green Street." The breath left my lungs. It wasn't just my street, it was my exact address. I slammed the laptop shut and bolted to the window, yanking the curtain aside. The street outside looked normal, quiet, empty except for a couple of parked cars. But I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching. I paced the room, trying to rationalize. Maybe it was a bluff. Maybe the Velvet Room was some kind of advanced phishing scam that had pulled my information from my browser or VPN, but that didn't explain how it knew about the door or the steps. My phone buzzed, making me jump. It was a text from an unknown number. "Why did you close the door?" "We weren't finished." I dropped the phone as though it had burned me. My mind raced, trying to make sense of it all. I'd been careful, hadn't I? But no amount of precautions could account for this level of intrusion. For the rest of the night, I sat in my apartment, every light on, staring at the laptop I couldn't bring myself to touch. Every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind outside felt like an imminent threat. I wanted to believe it was some elaborate hoax, a cruel prank by tech-savvy strangers. But deep down I knew better. I'd opened a door I couldn't close. The Velvet Room wasn't just a game. It was a trap, and I had walked straight into it. The next morning, I woke to sunlight streaming through my window, but the unease from the night before hadn't faded. My laptop sat closed on the desk, like a dormant snake. I avoided it all day, convincing myself I could just move on. But by evening, my curiosity clawed at me. I had to know what the Velvet Room was. With the lights turned low and the curtains drawn, I sat at my desk, powered up the laptop, and reopened the Darknet browser. I'd already deleted all traces of the site from my history, but a simple search led me back to whispers of the Velvet Room in forums and chat rooms. I started combing through threads, most of which were filled with speculation and conspiracy theories. Some users claimed it was a front for human trafficking. Others swore it was a hub for live-stream torture, pay-per-view atrocities with real victims. A few called it a psychological experiment designed to push users to their breaking point. One comment stood out: "The Velvet Room doesn't need you to believe. It needs you to play." Despite the warnings, I found myself unable to stop. I joined chat rooms, pretending to be a curious newbie while carefully crafting my questions to avoid drawing too much attention. Most people dismissed me as another thrill seeker, but one user, with the handle nullcode, offered a private chat. "Nullcode, you're looking for the Velvet Room." Me, "What do you know about it?" Nullcode, "Too much. You don't want to go deeper." Me, "I already have. It's personal now." Nullcode, "If they've seen you, it's already over." I stared at the screen, heart racing. Nullcode sent a link before disappearing from the chat. I hesitated for a long time before clicking. The link led to an encrypted directory filled with files labeled with random strings of numbers and letters. Each file contained seemingly random lines of code, fragmented text, and symbols that looked like gibberish. But I noticed a pattern. Certain strings repeated across multiple files. It took hours, but I pieced together what seemed to be a key, and when I entered it into the search bar, the screen shifted. A crude interface loaded, the words "Welcome back" flashing ominously at the top. The Velvet Room was open again. This time, the site wasn't asking me to play games. Instead, there was a single video feed in the center of the screen, marked live. Beneath it, a title read, "The Decision." Curiosity gave way to dread as I clicked. The stream opened to a dimly lit room. A man sat bound to a chair, his face bruised and bloodied, a gag in his mouth. The camera was steady like it was mounted on a tripod, and faint breathing could be heard in the background. Someone just off-screen. Text scrolled across the bottom of the feed, revealing two options: spare or eliminate. The instructions were simple. Viewers could vote on the man's fate, and the majority decision would be carried out. I stared at the screen, horrified. Was this real? It had to be a sick performance, a stage setup for shock value. But the way the man squirmed, the way his muffled cries echoed in the room, it was too authentic. Votes began pouring in, and my stomach turned as eliminate gained a decisive lead. Suddenly, a chat box opened next to the video feed, addressed directly to me. "Welcome to the audience, Alex. Your vote counts more than most. Choose wisely." I slammed the laptop shut, my chest heaving. That night, paranoia settled in like a heavy fog. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I checked the locks on my door twice, then 3 times. My phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "You didn't vote. That's disappointing." I threw the phone across the room. The next day, I noticed things that didn't add up. A black sedan idled across the street for hours, its windows tinted too dark to see through. My phone rang sporadically, always from block numbers, and when I answered, I was met with silence. At work, a coworker named Claire approached me with unusual interest. She asked how I was sleeping, if I'd been stressed lately. When I shrugged her off, she leaned closer, her voice dropping. "You've been acting strange. Is everything okay?" Her tone felt loaded, like she wasn't asking out of concern, but fishing for something. I waved her off, but her words clung to me. Over the next few days, I spiraled. I spent hours digging deeper into Darknet forums, searching for answers or a way to shut the Velvet Room down. Every thread led to dead ends or more horror stories. I began to question everything: the strange occurrences, the eerie accuracy of the site's knowledge, even the people around me. Claire seemed to be watching me more closely. The black sedan appeared outside my apartment again, its engine humming faintly in the still night. Then, another message appeared on my laptop while I was researching. "You're closer than you think. Don't stop now." Beneath it was another link. I clicked before I could second-guess myself. The screen loaded slowly, revealing a new interface with a countdown timer. 23 minutes and 45 seconds. Above it were the words, "Be ready to decide." I stared at the timer, dread pooling in my stomach. Whatever the decision was, I wasn't ready for it. But as the seconds ticked down, I realized there was no way out. The Velvet Room wasn't just a dark corner of the internet. It was a trap, and I was already caught. The countdown hit 0, and the screen went black. My heart was pounding, every nerve in my body screaming for me to shut the laptop, yank the plug, anything to make it stop. But I was frozen, staring as the screen flickered back to life. A live stream appeared, just like before, but this time, the setup was different. It wasn't a dimly lit warehouse or a nondescript location. The room on the screen was starkly familiar. Beige walls, a cheap wooden chair, the faint outline of a window with blinds slightly askew. My stomach lurched as I realized it was identical to my living room. This couldn't be real. It had to be a trick. But then the camera panned slightly, revealing a man bound to the chair, his face pale and bruised. He wasn't screaming or struggling, just shaking, his head jerking as though he'd been crying for hours. Above the stream, bold text spelled out, "The decision, choose their fate." Below the feed, the same two options appeared, spare and eliminate. I stared at the screen, my breath coming in shallow gasps. This was a sick joke. It had to be. There was no way they could recreate my apartment so perfectly. No way they could. The chat box blinked to life. "Don't look away, Alex. You're the deciding vote." "What the hell?" I whispered, my voice shaking. My hands hovered over the keyboard, trembling. The keys felt alien, as if touching them would solidify this nightmare. I tried to close the browser, but nothing happened. The cursor refused to move beyond the boundaries of the screen, as though the program had taken over my entire system. Panicking, I mashed the power button on the laptop. Nothing. The chat box lit up again. "No more games. You decide, or they die." I wanted to scream, to break the computer in half, but instead, I sat frozen, staring at the screen as tears pricked the corners of my eyes. The man in the chair looked up at the camera, his gaze pleading. His lips moved, though no sound came through. "Let him go," I muttered, my voice barely audible. The chat box responded almost instantly. "Prove it. Vote." I stared at the options, my vision blurring. Every fiber of my being screamed to vote spare. But the weight of the situation paralyzed me. Was this real? Was someone's life actually hanging on my decision? "Stop this," I typed into the chat box, desperate. "Please." The response was cold and immediate. "Stop wasting time. Choose." My finger hovered over the mouse. Every second felt like an eternity. I couldn't let someone die, could I? But what if this was just some elaborate prank? If it wasn't real, sparing them meant nothing. If it was real, eliminating them was unthinkable. "Do it, Alex," the screen urged, the text flashing red. "They're running out of time." A timer appeared in the corner of the screen. 1 o'clock. 59 seconds. 58. The man in the chair began to thrash, his muffled cries now audible through the speakers. The camera zoomed in on his face, his terror palpable. 30 seconds. "Spare," I whispered, moving the cursor toward it. 15 seconds. As my hand trembled, the chat box blinked again. "You can save yourself, Alex. Or save him. Your choice." I froze. What did that mean? Was I in danger too? My mind raced as the countdown ticked away. 5, 4, 3. In a surge of panic, my hand slipped. The cursor landed on Eliminate, and I clicked. The screen froze for a moment, the live stream cutting out to static. My hands flew to my mouth as bile rose in my throat. What had I done? The static faded, replaced by a single line of text. You're one of us now. Welcome to the Velvet Room. The screen went black. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at my blank laptop screen, unable to process what had just happened. My chest heaved as I struggled to breathe, to think, to comprehend. Had I just killed someone? Was it even real? The sudden chime of my phone jolted me back to reality. A text from an unknown number. Well done, Alex. We knew you had it in you. I threw the phone across the room. The next morning, I tried to convince myself it was a nightmare. But the gnawing guilt wouldn't leave, and the room on the stream, my room, remained burned into my memory. A knock at the door broke my spiral. I opened it to find a small, unmarked package sitting on the welcome mat. I glanced up and down the hallway. Empty. My hands trembled as I carried it inside. The package was light, its contents shifting slightly as I placed it on the counter. I tore the paper off, revealing a plain black box. Inside, a single USB drive. I plugged it into my laptop, my stomach twisting in knots. A folder appeared, labeled simply Alex. Inside were dozens of videos, each one time-stamped. I clicked the first file, and my blood turned to ice. It was footage of me, sitting in my apartment, unaware of the camera's presence. There I was typing on my laptop, making dinner, even sleeping. The angles were impossible. Someone had been in my home, setting up hidden cameras, watching me for weeks. The final video was labeled The Decision. I hesitated, then clicked. The screen filled with the same live stream from the night before. But this time, the man in the chair wasn't alone. A figure entered the frame, wearing a mask, their voice distorted as they spoke directly to the camera. This is only the beginning, Alex. Welcome to your new life. The video cut out, leaving me staring at my reflection in the blank screen. I wasn't just being watched. I was part of it now, and there was no way out. The package sat on my counter like a bomb, waiting to go off. My thoughts churned, frantic and incoherent, as I paced the room. Someone had been in my apartment, recording me, orchestrating every step of this nightmare. The Velvet Room wasn't just an internet horror story. It was real, and it had me in its grip. The USB drive felt heavier than its weight as I slipped it into my pocket. There was only one thing left to do. I went straight to the police station the next morning. My heart hammered as I sat in the sterile, fluorescent-lit waiting room, clutching the USB drive like a lifeline. An officer led me into a small room where another officer, Detective Harris, sat behind a cluttered desk. "How can I help you today?" he asked, his tone professional but detached. "There's something you need to see," I said, sliding the USB across the desk. Harris raised an eyebrow, but plugged it into his computer. My stomach churned as I watched him click on the folder labeled Alex. The first video played, me at my desk typing away, oblivious to the hidden camera. Then came the footage of the live stream, the man tied to the chair, my trembling hand clicking Eliminate. "I didn't do this," I blurted, my voice cracking. "They made me. It's all a setup." Harris's expression darkened as he clicked on another file. This one was new, one I hadn't seen before. The video showed me holding a knife, standing over what looked like a lifeless body. Blood was everywhere. The camera angle shifted, and I saw my own face, expressionless, cold. "That's not me," I whispered, my hands shaking. Harris leaned back, his eyes narrowing. "This footage says otherwise." "You don't understand," I pleaded. "They're framing me. They've been in my apartment. They've been watching me." Harris didn't respond. Instead, he unplugged the USB and slid it back to me. "I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but this isn't funny. If what you're saying is true, you'd better lawyer up." "No, please. Leave before I call someone to escort you out," he interrupted, his voice ice cold. I stumbled out of the station, the USB burning in my pocket. That night, my phone buzzed with another message. "That was a bad move, Alex. Don't involve the authorities again." Attached was a video clip. My parents sitting in their living room, laughing at something on TV. The camera angle was too close, Too intimate. Someone was watching them. Then came the message. Next time it's their turn. I sank to the floor, tears streaming down my face. They had me cornered. The paranoia crept in like a virus. Every sound in my apartment felt amplified. A creak in the floorboards, the hum of the fridge, the faint rustle of the blinds in the breeze. I noticed my phone acting strangely. It would unlock itself, apps opening without my input. Emails were sent from my account to addresses I didn't recognize. Once, I found a draft of an email to the police that I hadn't written. I tried resetting my devices, but nothing worked. It felt like they were inside everything I owned, always one step ahead. The next package came 2 days later, a brand new phone and a note that read, "Use this for tasks. Payment is already wired." I stared at the screen, horrified. The phone buzzed to life, displaying a balance in cryptocurrency, an obscene amount. More money than I'd seen in my life. Then came the first task: upload this file to the following Darknet forum. Attached was a video, another live stream of a man tied to a chair. A timer counted down at the bottom of the screen. "No," I whispered, shaking my head. The phone buzzed again. "Refusal isn't an option, Alex." Below was a photo of my mother. Her smile was frozen in place, the kind of expression you wear when you don't realize you're being watched. Trembling, I uploaded the file. The screen refreshed, and the balance increased. I felt sick. Days blurred into weeks. The tasks became more frequent and darker. I was instructed to distribute videos, share cryptic links, even hack into social media accounts to post disturbing content. Each task came with a reward in cryptocurrency and a veiled threat. I tried to fight back. I smashed the phone, thinking it would free me, but a new one arrived the next day with a note. "We can do this forever." Desperation consumed me. Every attempt to escape their grip was met with swift retaliation. Strange noises in my apartment, flickering lights, more messages reminding me of the danger my family faced. One night, while sifting through the USB files in a moment of hopeless defiance, I found something new. It was a video labeled Truth. I clicked it. The footage showed a familiar face, Claire, my coworker. She was sitting in a dimly lit room, her expression blank, as someone off-camera gave instructions. "She's one of us," the voice said. "She'll watch him. Make sure he follows through." The camera zoomed in on Claire's face. She didn't flinch. My chest tightened. Could it be real? Or was this just another of their mind games? The paranoia doubled. I avoided Claire at work, barely speaking to anyone, afraid of who might be watching. Every interaction felt loaded, every glance a potential threat. The final task of the week arrived with a chilling twist. "You're ready for the next level. Make contact with the target." Attached was an address, one I recognized immediately. It was my parents' house. "No," I said out loud, my voice trembling. "I won't do it." The response came instantly. "If you don't, we will." Tears streamed down my face as I realized the terrible truth. The Velvet Room wasn't just watching me. It was controlling me, and there was no way out. Months of playing puppet for the Velvet Room had hollowed me out. My once quiet life was a distant memory, replaced by endless paranoia and the haunting knowledge that my every move was being watched. I'd lost count of the tasks they'd forced me to complete, each more depraved than the last. My compliance felt like survival, but it came at the cost of my soul. Then came the ultimatum. The message arrived at midnight, displayed in bold red text across the burner phone screen. "Prove your loyalty. Record yourself committing a crime. No edits. No excuses." Beneath it was a simple list of options: robbery, arson, or murder. My stomach churned as I stared at the choices. The thought of crossing that final line, of becoming something truly monstrous, was unbearable. I couldn't do it. I wouldn't. But the consequences of refusing loomed large. They'd threatened my family, destroyed my reputation, and framed me for crimes I hadn't committed. If I didn't comply, they'd unleash everything. For the first time in months, I felt a spark of defiance. I wouldn't let them control me anymore. If they wanted a show, I'd give them one, but on my terms. My plan began with a phone call to Jake, one of the few people I still trusted. A tech-savvy friend from college, Jake had helped me set up my initial VPN when I first dipped into the Darknet. He didn't know the details of what I'd gotten into, but he knew enough to be wary. "You sure about this, man?" Jake asked, his voice laced with hesitation after I explained my idea. "I don't have a choice," I replied, trying to keep the desperation out of my tone. "You're the only one who can help me pull this off." Jake agreed, reluctantly. We spent the next week setting up hidden cameras in an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. The plan was simple: fake the crime, make it look convincing enough for the Velvet Room, and capture everything on my own devices. Jake would monitor the live stream remotely and ensure the footage couldn't be tampered with. Once we had proof, we'd release it online, exposing the Velvet Room for what it was. The day of the crime arrived with a suffocating sense of dread. My hands trembled as I reviewed the script Jake and I had prepared. The plan was to fake a robbery, break into the warehouse, stage some destruction, and appear to rough up a mannequin disguised as a person. It was low stakes, but dramatic enough to satisfy the Velvet Room's demands. I texted Jake as I approached the warehouse. "In position. Ready to go." His response didn't come immediately, and my chest tightened. After a minute, my phone buzzed. "All set. Go ahead." Relieved, I slipped inside the warehouse. The cameras Jake had helped me plant blinked red, recording from multiple angles. I donned a ski mask and began following the script, smashing a few crates, overturning tables, making the chaos as believable as possible. The mannequin was positioned in the center of the room, tied to a chair with a hood over its head. I approached it, my heart hammering. This was the moment the live audience would tune in. "Let this be a warning," I growled, my voice distorted by a cheap voice modulator Jake had supplied. I'm striking the mannequin, careful not to actually damage it. The chat on my burner phone exploded with activity. "Good work, Alex. Welcome to the club. Keep going." I felt a flicker of hope. It was working. Then everything fell apart. The lights in the warehouse flickered, and the cameras around me blinked off, their red lights vanishing one by one. My phone buzzed violently. "You thought you were clever, Alex, but we're always ahead of you." The chat messages shifted in tone. "Nice try, hero. This isn't a game you win." Before I could react, a spotlight flooded the room, blinding me. I shielded my eyes and stumbled back, panic clawing at my chest. "Jake!" I shouted, fumbling for my phone. "What's happening?" There was no response. The chat continued to mock me as I heard footsteps echoing through the warehouse. A figure emerged from the shadows, wearing the same mask as the executioner I'd seen in the streams. In their hand was a real knife, glinting under the harsh light. I backed away, my voice trembling. "What is this?" The figure didn't answer. They moved to the mannequin, yanked off its hood, and revealed something that froze me in place. It wasn't a mannequin. It was Jake. His face was pale, his eyes wide with terror, and duct tape sealed his mouth. Before I could process what was happening, the masked figure plunged the knife into Jake's chest. Blood pooled beneath him as his muffled screams echoed in my ears. The chat went wild. "Now, that's entertainment. Welcome, Alex. You've finally arrived." The camera shifted, focusing on me as I sank to my knees, paralyzed by shock. My phone buzzed again. "You're one of us now," I screamed, but the sound was drowned out by the wail of sirens. Moments later, police officers stormed the warehouse, guns drawn. The next few hours were a blur of handcuffs, accusations, and flashing cameras. As I was shoved into the back of a squad car, I noticed the crowd that had gathered outside. Familiar faces stood among the onlookers. Claire, my co-worker, smirking. My landlord, nodding approvingly. Even the barista from my favorite coffee shop was there, watching with cold detachment. It wasn't random. It was planned. The Velvet Room wasn't just a website. It was everywhere. The news broke that night. Local man revealed AS mastermind behind Darknet crime ring. My face was plastered across every screen. My name tied to every heinous act the Velvet Room had orchestrated. From my cell, I stared at the blank wall, the weight of betrayal crushing me. They'd won. I was their scapegoat, their fall guy. And the worst part? There was no one left to believe my story. Thanks for watching. If you liked the story, Click like, subscribe to the channel, and write an idea for the next story in the comments.